Guys, we're back. We're going to start looking and evaluating these sine, cosine, tangent, and subsequent values at every stop along the unit circle. At least all the stops that are referenced at pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3. Sorry for this little shaky hand here on the screen, but you know this table well. At least you better for the upcoming tests. So then, in terms of looking at some of these, let me get a pen going here. Okay, the tangent of 7 pi over 3. Of course, we know immediately the reference angle is pi over 3. Okay, that's the nice thing about radian form. Okay, 7 pi over 3 is 2 1/3 pi. Positive rotation, which takes you 2 pi and then right back into the first quadrant, which of course there is reference at pi over 3. So there's your value of root 3. Negative 11 pi over 6. First off, where is it located? 11 pi over 6. Okay, which is what? Negative rotation, almost 12 pi over 6, so almost one full revolution, but pi over 6 short, which puts you right back in first quadrant, which is the sine, which is, of course, 1/2. Okay, cosine of 17 pi over 4. Well, 17 pi over 4, okay, reference angle of pi over 4. 17 pi over 4 is pi over 4 short. Pi over 4 short of 16 pi over 4, which is pi over 4 short of what? Pi over 4 short of 2 full revolutions. Okay, so there's 2 pi. Okay, there's 4 pi. This is swinging us right back into quadrant 1, pi over 4, which is root 2 over 2. Cosecant of negative 13 pi over 3. Well, again, first off, where is negative 13 pi over 3? That's almost negative 4 pi. So these are all coming around, okay? This is negative 4 pi over 3. There's negative 2 pi. A negative 4 pi is just another revolution. And then that's dipping you down into quadrant 4. Quadrant 4. It is 1 over the sine of that. 1 over the sine, okay, 1 over the sine, which is then going to take you into quadrant 4, where the sine is going to be negative. So it's going to be a negative. It's going to be the negative reciprocal of root 3 over 2, which is 2 over root 3 negative. You can rationalize that. I don't really care much about that. Okay, here you go. Watch. Negative 22 pi over 4 needs to reduce. If it can reduce, you got to reduce, because it's not going to tell you necessarily that reference angle, all right? So pi over 2 is the reference angle, okay? And it's 11 pi over 2 negative, which is, okay, which is negative 5 pi over 2, okay? Which is negative 5 and pi over 2. So it's negative 5 pi, which is 2, 4, 5, and lands you up here, okay? Lands you up there, right at the 0, 1. And we're asking for the sine, which is the y value, so that's 1, okay? Secant of negative 5 pi over 6, okay? It's 1 over the cosine. 1 over the cosine. Negative 5 pi over 6 is right here, where the sine and cosine are going to be negative, okay, in quadrant 3. All right, it's going to be negative. The reference is pi over 6. The cosine of pi over 6, as you've seen up here, okay, was root 3 over 2. So it's negative reciprocal of root 3 over 2, okay? And let's see, cosine of 38 pi over 3. I've outlined this one for you. Think pi over 3 short of 39 pi over 3, which is pi over 3 short of 13 pi over 3, which is, okay, 12 pi is 1 pi. All right, so 12 pi puts you around here, 6 times, and then ultimately ends you up here at, this would be 13 pi, but it's short of that, okay? So it's falling right down here. All right. No, I did I'm sorry, I did the rotation in the negative sense. So obviously you want to correct that. All right. So once again, this is going to be 13 pi. Okay. Sorry about this and acting up. Okay. But then 13 pi is going to be, all right, this way. That's 13 pi. 13 pi is going to be 1 revolution. Okay. And then it's short of that, which is right there in the fourth quadrant where the cosine is going to be negative. Okay. Sine of 38 pi over 3. Well, of course, we're right in the same location, but the sine is going to be negative, so it's going to be negative root 3 over 2. Okay, let's see. Name that graph. All right. The thing with name that graph, all these will not have a phase shift because then that just becomes too ambiguous. So they're either A sine of bx plus or minus d, or cosine of the same variety. Okay. So there's no phase shift, no shifting back and forth, no C term. Okay. Again, that gets a little too ambiguous, so I'm not going to put that there. First thing you want to do is determine the amplitude. You got to find okay, so this one's pretty obvious. It's a cosine. So let's take a look at these over here. Okay. The amplitude, okay, is the high in this case, which is 3, minus the low, which is at -2, so minus a -2 over 2. So that's 5 over 2 is the amplitude, okay? The fact that it doesn't sink down to 2.5, it only sinks to -2, means it's been pushed up, so that accounts for that. The next thing you want to look for is the period. The period goes from well, we don't have a full period here. Well, we do, but it's the half period is from high to low, or low to high, and that spans 2 units. So in this, I got 2 pi over b equaling 2, which means that b must equal, okay, no, I'm sorry, it's equal to 2. It's equal to 4 actually, because because this is a half a wavelength of 2 units, so the whole wavelength is 4 units. Okay, so 2 pi over b is 4, and then you solve that and you get b is pi over 2. Let's look at this one again. This one, the amplitude, okay, of course, is going to be the high minus the low, so it's 60 minus a -20, which is 80 over 2, so the amplitude is 40, but it looks to be flipped over. It's definitely a cosine, okay? And the period's going to be, let's see, from 0 to 24 pi. That's the period. So 2 pi over b is equal to the period, which is 24 pi, which means we cross multiply and solve, b is going to be 1/12. And it looks to be pushed up 20 units because it should have rose to 40, and it rose to 60. So let's take a look at the graphs. Construct one period of negative sine of 1/4 x. You were asked to find all these things. The amplitude right there is a. It's never negative. It's the absolute value of a. The period is, okay, 2 pi divided by 1/4, which is 2 pi times 4, which is 8 pi. And we're graphing the sine, which, if you remember, should cross the beginning, middle, and end. 0, 4 pi, and 8 pi would be beginning. We're spanning out to 8 pi. Halfway through is 4 pi. Quarter of the way through is 2 pi. 3/4 of the way is 6 pi. Okay, beginning, middle, and end. We're flipped over because of the negative here. And we're a sine. So there we go. There's the graph. And the last one, let's see. Negative 1/2 the cosine of pi over 2. The amplitude is 1/2. The period 2 pi divided by a half, okay, is 2 pi divided by 2 pi divided by b is the period. So the b term is pi over 2. 2 pi divided by pi over 2 becomes 4. So the span is 4 units. 4 units, halfway 2, quarter way 1, 3/4 way 3. Okay? We're doing the cosine negative, rising to a half, falling to a negative half. Okay? And the cosine intercepts at the quarter and 3/4 way, and then we sketch in the graph. And that is it, my friends. That is it.